I'll never forget the day I realized my mountain cabin had been stolen out from under me, stolen not on paper, but in practice. 3 buses full of strangers poured onto my land. The lock on my gate snapped like it was never there, and in a matter of hours my private retreat had been turned into a carnival. A DJ booth thumped on my deck. Kids were splashing in my pool, and a massive banner thanked me by name for hosting. I hadn't hosted anything. I hadn't agreed to a damn thing. And yet, there I stood, surrounded by people who thought I was the generous idiot who invited them all in. That property was supposed to be my sanctuary. I bought that cabin years ago, 2 hours outside Denver, as a place to breathe, to restore myself. I'd spent weekends planting flowers, refinishing the deck, babying that lawn until the grass grew thick and soft. And in one afternoon, Margaret Lopez, the HOA president from hell, decided my work, my money, my privacy meant nothing. She cut the lock. Rolled-in food trucks hung party lights from my trees, even staked a bouncy castle straight into my garden. Families were grilling on my deck. Toddlers with muddy shoes were running through my cabin. Vendors were selling merchandise on my patio furniture. It wasn't trespass. It wasn't vandalism. It was an invasion. And the worst part, they all believed I had approved it. Margaret greeted me like I was a business partner, clipboard in hand, smile plastered across her face, announcing me to the crowd as the wonderful property owner making this day possible. Parents shook my hand. Thanked me for giving their kids the best summer day ever. How was I supposed to respond? Actually, I don't know you. You've destroyed my property. Get the hell out. I'd be the monster ruining family fun. When I confronted her, when I finally snapped and demanded, Margaret, what the hell is this? You cut my gate lock. She didn't flinch. She handed me a folder of paperwork, insurance claims. I never filed contracts. I never signed with my signature forged so perfectly, it almost made me question my own memory. She even told me with a straight face that we'd secured $25,000 for venue improvements. Venue. As if my mountain retreat was some rental hall for her HOA circus. For a moment, just one terrifying moment, I wondered if I was the crazy one. Maybe I had missed something. Maybe I'd signed something while distracted. Maybe I'd forgotten. I stood there watching kids laugh in my pool, watching families smile in the mountain air, and I thought, am I selfish? Am I the villain for not sharing this place? That doubt nearly broke me. Then, Paul, my neighbor, stormed through the broken gate. He was furious, red-faced, pointing at the bolt cutters lying on the ground. She's been doing this for months, John, he shouted. Every other Saturday. Same buses, same vendors, same setup. I've got photos, 6 months' worth. He pulled out his phone and showed me everything. January's snow festival, February's Valentine's event, Easter weekend, Mother's Day. Hundreds of strangers on my land while I was back in Denver, completely oblivious. My stomach turned cold. It wasn't a one-time stunt. It was an operation. Margaret had been running a business on my land, collecting money, charging admission, hiring vendors like she owned the place. And still, when the sheriff arrived, Margaret smiled like she had nothing to hide. She greeted him like a partner shoved a stack of polished documents into his hands. All the permits are filed. All the paperwork's proper, she cooed. The vendors backed her up, swearing they'd been working events here for months, that everything was professional, legitimate. The sheriff looked at me like I might be the problem, not the victim. My blood boiled. I wanted to scream. That was the lowest point. Everyone believed her story. Even I started to wonder if the law was somehow on her side. I felt invisible on my own land. For a second, I thought maybe I should just walk away, sell the cabin, give up, cut my losses. But then the crack appeared. A plain cardboard box in Margaret's car labeled Vista Crest Business Records. Year 1, Planning. The sheriff opened it and the truth spilled out like poison. Contracts with vendors listing me as co-owner. Spreadsheets of thousands of email subscribers. Profit sheets showing nearly $50,000 stolen in half a year. And then the bombshell, her long-term plan. 5 years of expansion. Campsites, permanent structures, a full resort. She had been planning to turn my cabin into her empire. The families who had been clapping for her 5 minutes earlier began to murmur. Parents realized they'd paid for tickets. Vendors realized they'd been duped by forged documents. The illusion cracked. And then, Linda, the woman Margaret had introduced as the HOA secretary, broke down. Her hands were shaking, her voice barely above a whisper as she admitted her real name, Linda Lopez, Margaret's daughter-in-law. She confessed everything. Margaret had threatened her family's landscaping business, forced her to sign papers, dragged her into the fraud. The room flipped in an instant. The community event transformed into a crime scene. More officers arrived, detectives specializing in fraud. They pulled out evidence of tax evasion, banking records, contracts, and finally the most twisted piece of all, Margaret's attempt at an adverse possession claim. She had filed legal papers to try to seize my property outright, convinced that a few months of festivals would give her ownership. She hadn't even done her homework. The law required 18 years, not 18 months. Her entire scheme, this mountain of lies, was built on a misunderstanding. By then, the crowd had turned on her completely. Parents shouted that she'd used their kids as pawns. Vendors demanded their money back. Even her own family stood apart from her, ashamed and relieved to see her cornered. Margaret tried to argue, her voice rising, shrill. Desperate, the community needed this. Leadership requires tough choices. But it was over. The sheriff read her rights as they snapped the cuffs on her wrists. She was charged with fraud, forgery, conspiracy theft, tax evasion, 8 felonies in all. Her face twisted between disbelief and rage, but no one was listening anymore. The crowd that once adored her now saw her for what she was, a thief in a suit of authority, a fraud wrapped in the language of community. I stood there exhausted, hollow, but vindicated. I didn't cheer. I didn't celebrate. I just watched as they led her away, the sound of kids crying, parents cursing, vendors packing up what was left of the wreckage on my land. And that's where it ended, the moment her mask cracked and the law finally caught up with her. Some people think community is built on charm and persuasion. But the truth is, simple community has to be built on respect. Without that, it all rots.